Good morning, everybody. So, we're going to talk about two things this morning. I don't want to do a whole lot of prep for it because I kind of want to throw you guys into it the way I've thrown myself back into it. The first story is about the stimulus checks. The second story is a freedom of speech issue, more wrapped up with a control issue. The question we come away with is, who do you trust with your rights? Who do you trust with your money? The second stimulus check, who won't be getting a $600 check? CBS News reports it's most likely the checks will amount to $600 for each adult and child, or half of the $1,200 checks sent earlier. Still, Mr. Trump and House Speaker Pelosi have called for lawmakers to boost the amount to $2,000 per adult, a request that Wall Street analysts say has a slim chance of moving forward, considering the additional hundreds of billions such a raise in the amount would cost. This is also why, despite it not being reported here, that Trump asked Congress to cut out all of the pork, all the fat. All of the thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars, possibly even billions of dollars in foreign aid. And yes, there's the argument that, well, it was the coronavirus relief package attached to an omnibus spending bill. We pass those all the time. If the American people need more, then you should take from other countries. It's pretty simple. We're told this all the time. Everybody who's flied, secure your own mask before you reach for the mask of the person beside you. Make sure you can breathe before you start trying to help other people. I don't know. I don't know why this is such a hard concept for people to grasp. Maybe if we're not funding gender studies in Pakistan, we will be able to come up with this money. In crafting the latest stimulus, lawmakers have sought to rectify a few issues that restricted payment on the first checks earlier this year. For instance, distribution of the second stimulus checks would include so-called mixed status immigrant families, or families where American citizens are married to immigrants without green cards, a group that was blocked from receiving the checks earlier this year. Children under 17 will receive the same payment as adults, compared with $500 the first round. Children will be eligible for the same benefit amount as adults, and families with members of mixed immigration status with a valid Social Security number for one spouse are also eligible for payments, unlike with the CARES Act. However, the income limits in the most recent stimulus package are significantly different, which will cut off more middle-class families from receiving aid. There's a few who are overlooked who will also miss out on a second check. Chief among them, child dependents who are 17-year-olds and adults who are claimed as dependents on another person's tax return, such as is typical now with college students. Below are the groups of people who won't receive checks. Child dependents who are 17 or older, adult dependents from college students. You're not an adult if you're still someone's dependent. Sorry. It's just the way it is. This from a guy who takes care of his ailing parent. I don't consider that person an adult. They're being taken care of. Single people earning over $87,000. You know what, man? I kind of agree with that. If you still have your job and you're making almost $100K a year and you're single, you should be fine. I got you in larger cities, in large cities and even larger places like, LA, New York. $100,000 a year isn't much, but if you're making $100,000 a year and you're single and that's not enough, I feel like you should downsize your lifestyle. Just saying. Married couples earning over $174,000. And I say this like the same thing here. I say this though, and it occurs to me as I'm saying it that doesn't sound elitist. That just sounds wrong. It feels wrong. It hits me wrong. Because even if they're fine, even if they're well off, even if they don't need this, it's their tax money. It's everyone's tax money pulled out of a pot. They should get some too. Kind of makes sense. I feel like it makes more sense that way. Freedom of speech. Your ability to say things should not be restricted by your environment. There should not be restrictions to freedom of speech. I even agree to some extent in cases where it would cause violence. What do I mean by that? I mean in cases where, even though the Supreme Court has ruled that inciting people to violence or panic, like yelling fire in a crowded theater or something like that, shouldn't be protected or is not protected speech, I kind of agree that you should be able to do it. You should be made a social pariah for it. There should be social and perhaps even monetary ramifications for that sort of thing. There should be. But should you be able to do it legally in a lawful manner, in a protected manner? Sure. But we're coming to a point in history where people don't believe that sort of thing anymore. That your freedom of speech is subject to the whims of some overarching authority. The censor is the wave of the future, right? A Pennsylvania school district has been asked, or has asked the Supreme Court to rule on whether students may be disciplined for what they say on social media. It was Saturday, blah, blah, blah. We're not going to read through all of this. Basically, student was on a sports team or a cheer team or something, got in trouble and or got kicked off, and wrote a snap message flipping somebody the bird, as kids do, and was talking smack about the school. Using a curse word 4 times, the student expressed her dissatisfaction with the school, softball, cheer, and everything. Newsflash. I know this is going to shock you guys, but angsty teenager puts out angsty message. Who would have thunk? One of the students took a screenshot and showed it to her mom, who just happened to be a coach. The student sued the school district after she was kicked off of the school, kicked out of the teams, and suspended from school. Students sued the school district, winning a sweeping victory in U.S. State Court of Appeals for the Third Circuit in Philadelphia. The court said the First Amendment did not allow public schools to punish students for speech off their grounds. That sounds about right. What you do outside of your work shouldn't affect your work. What you do and say. And we come to a really big catch point here. What you do outside of a place, what you do in your own home, should not affect what all's happening out in the rest of the world. It shouldn't affect your job, and it definitely shouldn't affect your school. They shouldn't have a say in your private speech and your social media. And yet, cancel culture has brought those things to light. What you say on Twitter, what you say on Facebook, what you say on Snapchat apparently can affect the rest of your entire world. And it shouldn't be that way. Next month, at its first private conference after the holiday break, the Supreme Court will consider whether to hear the case Mahoney Area School District versus BL number 20-255. The Third Circuit's ruling is in tension with decisions from several other courts, and such splits often invite Supreme Court review. In urging the justices to hear the case, the school district has said administrators around the nation need a definitive ruling from the Supreme Court on their power to discipline students for what they say away from school. None. You have none. At what point do we allow the state to just outright babysit us? At what point does what you allow your kids to do at home stop affecting school? Why should the school fill in for the parent? Only this court can resolve this threshold First Amendment question, bedeviling the nation's nearly 100,000 public schools. It's difficult to exaggerate the stakes of this constitutional question, he says, but added that schools had no business telling students what they could say when they were not in school. In the modern era, a tremendous percentage of minor speech occurs off campus, but online. Judicial decisions that permit schools to regulate off-campus speech that criticizes said schools are antithetical to the First Amendment. Such decisions empower schools to reach into any student's home and declare critical statements verboten, something that should deeply alarm all Americans. I 100% agree. The key precedents from a different era, in 1969, Tinker v. Des Moines Independent Community School District, the Supreme Court allowed students to wear black armbands to protest the Vietnam War, but said disruptive speech, at least on school grounds, could be punished. And there we have it. There we have it. We're not going to read the rest of this. I encourage you to. It's a New York Times article from today. Make that yesterday. I encourage you to go ahead and read the rest of it, but that's the crux of this issue and the crux of my problem with it. Why are we allowing the school? What right does the school have to demand that students conform to them, to their standards, to not criticize them? And that's really the base issue here. The student criticized the school and her programs. It wasn't what she said. It wasn't how she said it. It was who it was directed at. Are we going to teach our children that questioning authority is not allowed? That questioning the state, questioning schools is not allowed? I don't think that's a healthy precedent to set. And I think the only decision the Supreme Court has is to rule in favor of the student. What a student says offline or online away from campus is none of a school district's friggin' business. Period. That's all I got for today, boys and girls. I will catch you guys tomorrow. Stay safe. Stay prepared.